Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching the world. My name is Sean Driver. This is the Red Horde, and not going to go with the Who Are You series for Port Vale. We've got a dead rubber trophy match that's going to be played tomorrow. Today in a couple of hours. And so we're going to approach this one differently and basically just look at the starting lineup, the rules for eligibility, and then another topic that came up, that about phosphate levels and the COP, which had Twitter going absolutely nuts. I'm going to put my comments there, actually look at the documents for filing that were sent to the Wrexham Borough and talk about next steps and what does it mean in layman's terms, where do we go from here? So stick with us, join in, welcome to the Red Horde. Just before jumping into things, we are approaching 1,000 subscribers. That's exciting. It's awesome news. I'm blessed that I've had so many people who have followed along so far, joined for the watch parties, which continue to grow, and we will be going again tomorrow. I'm going to take my lunchtime break and extend it a little bit and cover the Port Vale game. Let's dive into that before getting to the COPE stuff. Lots of stuff I want to pack in, and I'm hoping to do this mostly in one take, and so excuse the edits if they're not there. We're just going to run through this and see where we end up. I posted on Twitter yesterday, hoping to get a couple of bites, my preferred lineup for the game. Here's the thing. There is nothing in this match except for home field advantage, home pitch advantage, a home game, whatever the reference is in Wales involving football, for whoever wins the game between Port Vale and Wrexham. Both teams have qualified for the knockout rounds, and so the winner, whether that be on penalty kicks or in full time, they're going to end up having the home match when the draw is made. The other team is going to end up getting an away match. So that's the only thing that we're really playing for. Other than that, there is absolutely nothing in this game. And so what does that mean? I do not want starters playing at all, unless they have to as qualified players. So I went and started to look at the lineup and say, who is available that satisfies the rules, that will give us a qualifying lineup that we can end up putting out there, and came up with that. So let's take a look at that. And first, just really quickly to jump into the EFL regulations, I know that it's boring and it's dry and I'm not going to post them up here. It just basically means this. You need to have a full available strength squad. What does that mean? You need to have 4 qualifying players. Who's a qualifying player? Well, anybody who played for the first team in the game immediately prior. Anybody who will play, you can correct it by putting somebody out there after that was in the lineup today, wasn't in the first team one, but will play in the subsequent following game, or is in the list of 10 players who have most frequently started and made first team fixture appearances. But most importantly, and the one that's most relevant and where everybody seems to check off the boxes, those that have made 40 or more starting appearances for first team fixtures or international equivalents, and not limited to the same club or season. So in their career. And there are a lot of people who then end up satisfying the box there. And here's the thing, you only need 4 of them. So I've gone through my list and I'm going to post it up there and everyone's going to get it and they're going to panic. But think about this, the game means nothing but the difference between a home game and an away game in the EFL trophy, and whatever value put on that, I don't ascribe much to it at all. Do I care if we get knocked out of the EFL trophy? Not at all. Not at all. Would I like to win it? Will I change my mind if we're in Wembley? Sure. But let's get through it by making sure that we're preserving ourselves from injuries. Can you imagine Parky if he puts out Moles or McLean or somebody, even though they're suspended for the Gillingham game, and he puts them out and they end up getting battered and something happens and they're out for a couple of weeks? We are dealing with too many injuries. It's a war of attrition in League Two. We're figuring that out. And so I don't want any injury. So here's my starting lineup. Luke McNicholas. I know that Howard is the other option, and I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to him starting, but I don't want Howard going down, because if he goes down, we're dealing with Ogonkwo, who's been amazing, but if he needs a spell, needs some relief, gets a knock, we don't have a backup. And that's not the situation that I think we want to be in. A little bit of management here. McNicholas gets the start for me. So let's jump into then where I think we can go in the defensive backs. We had Aaron James come out as a wing back on the right side, in the match against Salford City. He played 63 minutes in that game. Did a remarkable job. Welsh Beast and I chatted about it. I think he can fit in, but he's more naturally, as I understand it, a defender, so I'm putting him as one of the center backs. Another player who I think fits in the center back role, Callum McFadden. He's been with the club for an extended period, 29 years of age. He hasn't had a go since the EFL Cup game against Wigan, where he played 57 minutes. He's not in our 22-man squad, but that doesn't matter for the purposes of trophy games. And he satisfies one of the four outfield player requirements of those who have had 40 games or more. So I say throw out McFadden, check the box on that one, and then let's keep back to the youth. The next one, Max Cleworth, he's due for a run out. I'm not aware of any injury issues, and so I say tap the young man on the shoulder, send him on out there and get it all done. Finally, we're going to end up having to look at who we're going to put in the wing-back positions. Bryce Hosanna didn't make the 22-man squad, 24 years of age. Obviously, he had a significant run out last year and was quite involved in the games, and I think he's due to be able to get first team time in this trophy competition. And so you put out Bryce Hosanna and you let him run wild for the entirety of the game. That would be my plan. The other wing-back, I'm going to reach into the youth squad and give a debut, as I understand it from Transfer Market, 18-year-old Daniel Thomas Davis getting a shot. As I went and just said, who can play wing-back that's with the youth team, and Transfer Market said that's his position, and I said it's good enough for me. Not looking to get, I know some people were talking about McLean going out there, some people were talking about Ford getting some minutes. The idea of somebody getting injured, I don't want that risk, and so I say run the young guys out. Looking at the midfield then, I'm attempting to go young, play those that need some time, and there's two youngsters and one veteran that I've put into the group, someone sort of to anchor things, I guess you could say. I went with Owen Cushion, who I recall being listed as a sub in a trophy match, but didn't get out there, and to me that's good enough. If you're going to list him as a reserve, then for this game he gets his debut start, and so I say we put out the young man. January 5th 2005, man, I am getting old when players of that vintage are getting starts out into the league. 18 years of age, and so give him his debut start. Maybe a little bit more controversial, but I've put Luke Young as captain of the squad and sending him out there. We've seen him for 4 minutes against Notts, but he hasn't had a start since the Stockport County game back in match week 9. We only need 4 qualifying players, and we've got McFadden, we've got Cleworth, we've got Hosanna, Young, and I'm going to get to the next one, Waters, I'm going to suggest up front. And so, but for me, you can take Young out if there's somebody else in the midfield. I tried to find somebody on our first team that could maybe get some minutes, didn't see them, went to the youth team. I have no idea, no reference to any name other than Cushions, so I decided let's pick a veteran and put them in there to sort of anchor things. Luke Young goes out, gets some minutes. It works for me. The other one that I put in the midfield was young Mr. Harry Ashfield, who got a debut appearance in one of the trophy matches, and so if he's good enough to start there, or good enough to play there, sorry, he's good enough to have a run out here, and so give him a shot at minutes and time and strutting his stuff and an opportunity to showcase again. The other two up front, well, going to go with a little bit more experience. I've heard some people say that Palmer should be rested, but maybe Dalby should go out. Mullen might play because he's suspended. Again, I do not want the expletive problem of an injury occurring. So for me, Waters gets his run out. Obviously came in, he had a case of the yips. He hasn't been able to connect on things while he's been putting on a Wrexham jersey. We haven't seen him now since the EFL Cup match against Bradford City. And before that, he had 3 runouts where he had limited time coming off the bench, 60 minutes, 19 minutes, and 8. But give him his opportunity. I don't see any reason why we'd want to play anybody else, and he's going to be full of vinegar, to piss and vinegar, to go and prove his worth, and so give it to him, give him the chance, send it out to him. And the final one, Mr. Bickerstaff, who we haven't seen really since, well, I think Bradford City as well, to be fair, and he's had 5 match week games before not making the 22-man roster, and so for me, Mr. Bickerstaff gets his minutes as well. The reserves, I've listed a bunch of names, some potential other names. Hall is the backup. Howard could go in there. McNicholas could slide down if Howard comes in. I put Mullen on the bench, but only for one reason and one reason only. If it goes to penalty kicks, last minute sub, he can go in, he can get some glory. It's a fun little time for him to sit on the bench and experience the game and the opportunity. I put McLean there for really the same reason, in case there's an injury or something else, he may end up getting drawn in. Other than that, yeah, I made the mistake and I put Young. I don't know whether you put Jordan Davies. I don't know if there's another midfielder. It's that youth midfield that I'm just not confident enough, haven't seen really anything. So I'm not Wonder Boy, I'm not in the know. fill whoever you can. The other debut potential is Edwards. And the only reason I say that is because if I recall correctly, he was listed as a reserve and the name looked familiar in a previous game. So look, that's my lineup and people are going to think I'm nuts, but let's talk about it. Just think about it. If somebody goes down, anybody goes down that gets minutes and ends up injuring themselves for any extended period of time, do we really want to risk that in a game where the only thing that matters, we could lose 20-0, and the only thing that we lose for it is we have to play an away match in the first knockout round of the EAFL trophy. Big deal. So I know that may be frustrating for people who have bought tickets and are interested in going and watching the Stars play, and hey, there's tickets available. Last I heard there was only 6,000 that sold. I would love to be, like if it was me, I'm going to this game because I want to see the youth get an opportunity. I think that's exciting that it's not going to just be the regular run out. So that's my take on it. Let me know your thoughts. Slam me in the comments, fire it up on Twitter, freak out if you feel it's necessary, but we'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm not Parky. Maybe with Mr. Harvey being the creator of the latest iteration of the EFL trophy, what it's called, the Bristol Motor Sport BSM, BDM, no BSM, Bristol Sport Motors Trophy, whatever it is. Not the greatest prize, not the one that I want, and not the one that I think we should be striving for. But hey, if we get past this round, well, we're going to get past this round. If we get past this round, we have another home game, so be it. We can march on forward and continue to run out some young guys, maybe a little bit more competitive when the games matter. Rambled. The next issue that I want to talk about, there was a tweet today that came out with a media report regarding phosphate levels and condition number 3 in Wrexham's COP application, and Twitter went sideways. I think the key components of the article were glossed over, and so what I've done is I went and pulled the last 3 application proposals that were made by Wrexham AFC with respect to Mold Road. I've pulled them down. It's some 70 documents. I don't know if you guys are going to enjoy what ends up following. I'm not going to get too far into a deep dive, but if this is something people want me to do, just by way of background, if you haven't been to the channel before, I'm a barrister in Canada, so I have some experience with going through some of these documents. But more importantly, back when I was a young whippersnapper at 21, I was a elected city councillor in a small city in northern BC called Williams Lake. I was the co-chair of the Public Works Committee. I was responsible for looking over documents similar to what Wrexham has. Obviously different laws. What I'm saying is not legal advice by any stretch of the imagination, and what I'm saying may not have application because I don't understand all of the regulations and bylaws of Wrexham Council, but I have some familiarity with the language and the wording that's involved, so I'm just trying to cover that off, and I'm going to jump into it and you guys can tell me if you see any value. If not, I guess I'll see you guys later when you return to another video. Hit the subscribe button before you leave. If you've been living under a rock and you've missed that the COP is being redeveloped, well, I guess that's one issue. But more importantly, if you missed what the announcement was that everybody freaked out today, it was publicized in The Leader a bunch, as well as a number of different articles. And it was about a decision notice that was made by the Wrexham Borough last week. October 30th was the date that the notice came out, that refused an application to vary a condition that was put on the club with respect to the capacity of the club. There were a number of conditions that were put out there, and I'll bring up the letter at some point in time and you can have a look at some of the other conditions. But what it did is it said that the capacity of 5,500 had to be 4,900. The issue that was being cited, phosphate levels. And so a lot of people ended up freaking out. There was lots of jokes about piss and phosphate levels and pollution and those sorts of things. A lot of derision of the council regarding the process and the application process. And really, this isn't something that a lot of the council members have control of. If you review the letter and the cover letter that was sent out by Wrexham Council dated October 30th, is they end up particularizing condition 3. They reference that it was pursuant to their powers under section 96A of the Town and Country Planning Act, and they go through, and there's 2 important things that are contained in this letter that you can see here. The first being the notes to the applicant. It says, the applicant has advised that there is no right of appeal against the council's refusal to grant this non-material amendment. Okay, fair enough, no right of appeal, but people freaked out and said, well, that's not appropriate, there should be an appeal process. Well, I'm going to suggest that what happened was the wrong process was used, wrong forms were used. Just really quickly, I can bring up exactly what that plan application was, and you can see it here. There's not a lot of information that's contained within the actual plan application. But more importantly, in that cover letter, they go on to say two more things. The applicant has advised, so that's the council telling Wrexham AFC, to contact council to discuss other options and procedures for making the desired changes to the existing planning permission. Now, I've written, or I've been responsible for signing letters similar to other developers who have ended up using a process that's inappropriate, whether it be looking to do a variance, when that wasn't the mechanism, whether that was an application for a public hearing and that wasn't the mechanism, and saying, look, rather than me spelling out exactly what the pathway is for you, what the city and the municipality ends up doing, and the Wrexham County Borough, is that they send out a message that just says, hey, off of official correspondence, give us a phone call and we'll tell you what needs to happen. They're going to have an obligation and probably a desire to push this through, but they've got to go through the right channels. And so to me, that's what that announcement was. It wasn't you're dead in the water. It's like, let's fix this up and clear up the process, you guys. The third one is it said the applicant is advised to contact the council's head of community well-being and development prior to the preparation of detailed plans. So what is that saying? Don't waste your time doing this again and incurring more costs and us having to come up with a response, because we may end up ticking people off. They've done that. Twitter was ablaze with it. And so they're saying, let's just do this smartly, figure out the right process. Do I blame the author of the application process from Savills, Portia Banwell? Not at all. This stuff happens all the time with experienced engineers, experienced developers. And so there's no criticism. It's just the process is what the process is. And now they've given you the pathway. So take the pathway. In layman's terms, what does it mean? And I said this to Tim from Fearless in Devotion, is we go again. This is football terms. We had a little bit of a setback, not a big deal. Pathway's still there. So let's go score. Not the biggest concern that I have with the COP in the slightest. But let's have a look and talk about just exactly what this all means. When you want to look at what are phosphate levels, so what there's a link on the bottom of the page that says refer to the statement of applicants' rights and general information on our planning website here. And they take you to an info sheet. So I'm going to read this directly from the website. It says Natural Resources Wales has published new targets to reduce river phosphate levels in special areas of conservation across Wales. Why are they doing that? Well, phosphorus levels and why it affects our rivers. And they basically say, hey, climate control or climate change is happening. There's phosphorus coming from agriculture and from sewage. And the rivers in Wales are not passing new standards, and we've got to be able to get these phosphate levels under control. And so they've published new targets with the Joint Nature Conservation Committee, and they go about and say 60% of water bodies in Wales fail against these tighter targets to try to deal with changes as a result of climate change. With respect to Wrexham in particular, those special areas of conservation, again, they clearly identify that the River Dee is the one that is at issue. It's designated in the majority of Wrexham County boroughs located within its catchment, and it's failing against those Natural Resource Wales targets. And so therefore there's an obligation made by Welsh regulations to satisfy. This isn't the county, this is Welsh regulations to go ahead and satisfy. It's not unique to Wrexham, it's a part of everybody's local planning authority, and so you've got to go ahead and you've got to check some boxes. And so that's all this is just checking some boxes, and these were the wrong boxes we presented. So that's that. Compartmentalize it, put it away. Now we know what we're talking about with phosphate. To go back and give you some history, Natural Resources Wales, amongst a whole host of people, were invited to give comment with respect to the application to develop the Cop and Mold Road. There are some 54 files, and I'll put the list of PDFs here. Everything from geotechnical studies to environmental studies to match day assessments to transportation network, all of those things that are influenced by the increase in capacity. There are comments here and conditions that came as a consequence, but specific to the one that's at issue, Natural Resources Wales produced a 2-page letter. In that 2-page letter, and I'm going to put it up here, you can stop the screen if hopefully you may be able to read it. Now down at the bottom of the page it says a key requirement of the AA, which stands for Appropriate Assessment stage, is to provide a clear understanding of potential impact of a proposal. The appropriate assessment must contain complete precise, and definitive findings and conclusions to ensure there is no reasonable scientific doubt remaining as to the effects of the proposed plan or project. And it goes down and says on the top of the second page, in our view, that appropriate assessment needs further significant development, and there's been insufficient evidence has been provided in relation to the impacts of the development. Okay, so there's your pathway. You got to go get the evidence. You end up demonstrating it. We thought that we had the evidence. We may have used the wrong form. We may still have the appropriate evidence. But trying to suggest that it's not material rather than material, to me, this is telling the Wrexham Council to say ignore what the Welsh Government has said about the materiality of phosphate issues with respect to its capacity. It's not going to fly. The Wrexham Council is not going to peeve off the Welsh Government. And so they're just saying, just check the boxes, you guys, and go through the process and do this. Now, that letter was part of the original application. If you go to the Wrexham Council website, it's WRRP/2022/0725, and it is 54. Well, more. It's 54 documents and letters that ended up being compiled into a letter of conditions of Wrexham Council, the third condition, and that decision date was made on January 12th of 2023. So in that decision, you scroll down to condition 3, and it says the number of spectators using the development shall not exceed 4,900. For the avoidance of all doubt, this applies to all football and non-football events held at the racecourse. You can take that letter again and scroll down further, and it ends up providing at section 3 an explanation. It says this condition is in the interest of protecting the River Dee and Bala Lake Special Area of Conservation in accordance with policy EC6 and the Wrexham Unitary Development Plan and technical advice number 5, nature conservation and planning. Have I looked at those documents? Hell no. I don't have time. I don't know if you guys are interested in me going through this entire process. I don't know if I have the technical expertise to be able to dive out what's contained specifically in those documents. That's typically the area of engineers and otherwise and consultants, and that ain't me. But I can understand Wales government, Natural Resources Wales said, this is a thing, and Wrexham is saying, okay, we need to get enough evidence to satisfy them that this is a thing, and until that happens, here's the condition and here's the reason why. So we have that material before us, like it or lump it. So that brief dive into the documents brings us back to one place, and that is the application September 22, 2023, and the letter from Savills and specifically Portia Branville. And you go down to the bottom of that paragraph, and it says, it is clear that the use of Copstand at the full capacity is supported, subject to addressing the matters raised by Welsh Water. Well, the fact that there's a subject to there raises that that's conjecture and it hasn't been finalized. It doesn't demonstrate the evidence, but it goes on further to say it is timely to remove this condition because the Five Fords wastewater treatment facility has been granted a permit by NRW. What I don't get from that is the evidence that says that that permit being granted demonstrates that phosphate levels are lower, and that's what Wales Natural Resources, Wales Water requires. So go and get that information and then we can assess it. It does go on further to say that, it does go on to say in conclusion on the second page that in these circumstances it is clear that the actual impact is extremely low. Well, I don't see the evidence anywhere in the submissions that were provided to Wrexham Council to be able to make that determination. So it goes on further to say the restriction was largely imposed as a general embargo. Well, I don't know where that assumption came from and whether it's accurate or not, but clearly Wrexham Council saying no. Natural Resources, the government is not saying that it's just a general embargo approach, but that they have real concerns. I showed you that letter. But it says, nevertheless, given the changes to permitting the securing the removal of a restrictive condition to allow capacity is timely. Well, I don't even think it's timely because we haven't put a spade in the ground yet. And that brings me back to the larger concern that how are we doing with the money? I mean, we went through the leveling up failure. We had a failure before that in securing the public funds. I've been involved in those meetings where as a council member, you go down to whatever ministry, whatever department, whatever politician, and you sit with other council members and the mayor and you try to end up saying, hey, you've got this coolly named capital project, earmarked funds, leveling up or go for it 2024, whatever they want to call it. And you say, here's what we're showing off for North Wales, and have a look at Wrexham, and we've got this Gateway project, and look at how beautiful it is, and all of the money. Now, I do think this is a beautiful project. Gateway project makes sense for an organization that's being Wrexham AFC, that's driving tourism in the industry. It's pulling in people like, hi, I'm one of them right here. I'm going to be there in April, I hope. It's pulling in people to bring in dollars and cents into the community. It's got the community buzzing. There's tourism opportunities, Welsh national team, all those things with the racecourse. It is full of buzz. It warrants public dollars. But this is Wrexham Council going and negotiating, going and spinning a tail and securing those funds. And I haven't heard that. And forget phosphate levels, forget the sewage issue, forget the Wrexham University and the property that they own and maybe being carved out and what to do with the student housing and all that sort of stuff. Doesn't matter. The money. That's what we're waiting on the announcement for. And Wrexham Council, you can, this is a tempest in a teapot, but let's keep the eye on the prize here and continue to drive forward with that. Look, I'm going to wrap that up. We're here with the watch party tomorrow, today, in a couple of hours, whatever it is. I'm going to try and have a nap, and then I got a work day, and then we'll do it for lunch. And be there for Gillingham. Exciting news with respect to Two Beards and a Podcast for the Aussies from Down Under, who are Wrexham fans who run their podcast. They're going to be joining us on The Hot Stove, which is where we have live chat and a couple of podcasters, and we end up basically taking questions from the people who attend that live. Will be a difficult one as far as timing concerns, because it's going to be late in the evening for me, which means it's later in the East Coast, which means it's ridiculous o'clock in Wales, but it will work for the Australians. And so I'm hoping to get some of the Aussies on. Hopefully I maybe have a couple of people who are able to connect that are regulars on the watch party, and we go on and keep building this. 1,000 subscribers is close. If you've enjoyed this at all, hit the subscribe button. If you want more of it, tell me in the comments below. I am more than happy to go through this sort of stuff in my spare time, I guess, as sick and twisted as that may be, to try and give you guys some idea on my take of what these documents speak to. But phosphate levels, not an issue. This is an easy problem for Wrexham to fix. They've just got to go through the process, and I don't doubt that they will. Anyway, this has been Sean Driver on the Red Horde. Take care.